have you. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book Behind the Mirror. No other than Miss Bridget Budd.
Thank
Welcome
you
to.
for that. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Miss.
I was just going to say thank you for that really fun introduction, Daniel. Thank you so much, and congratulations for being in your fifth season.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Padmas, for being number one. Number one for the fourth row, being on Padmas. And welcome to Book 101, Miss Bridget. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Certainly. My name is Bridget. I am officially a writer, truth seeker, and recovering internal achiever, overachiever.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Bridget, and welcome to the podcast itself. And behind the mirror, what inspired you to write this novel?
Gosh, I don't even know where to start with that. What inspired me to write it is because I'm a trauma informed certified health coach, board certified health coach, and a bunch of things. And when I was coaching people, I enjoyed the process, but what resonated more to me was kind of like a one to many. And I noticed that in coaching, and this was true for me personally as well, is that sometimes some of these modalities and things, and just even confronting the shadow side of ourselves, can be it can be really hard to do. Again, it can be pretty confronting. And I wanted a way to share some of the things that I learned, not only in my own life, but in the modalities that I studied and learned in a way that was a little more lighthearted, that was fiction in a way that people could read a story and perhaps see themselves in the story. So I wanted a less confronting way to bring some of these modalities to the public.
Miss Bridget, behind the mirror suggests hidden truth or dual realities. How does this concept manifest the novel's central narrative or character journeys?
Let me think about that one. Okay, can I hear it again, Daniel? Because I want to make sure I'm answering you in the most authentic way.
Definitely, behind the mirror suggests hidden truth or dual realities. How does this concept manifest
Mm.
in the novel's central narrative or character journeys?
Yeah, I'm glad I asked you to repeat that because it's the former, right? It's the hidden truth, really. It's not a dual. Actually, no, that's not true. Let me correct myself. It could be dual realities because Julie, my character, and I, we do share some emotional DNA, if you will. And there are parts of this story that I wish I would have lived. But it really developed from hidden truths. And the truth is really it wasn't a truth that I knew, if that makes sense, right? I didn't know what I didn't know in my own life, and Julie is very similar in that way. She started her life from a place of lack early in childhood, and that place really she was even in her adulthood, she was making choices from that place of lack and from that survival place in her childhood. And so it's really the character developed from really, I guess, maybe a more of a hidden truth.
How would you describe the novel's genre? Does it lean into
Mm.
psychological suspense, magical realism, literary fiction, or something else?
Wow, I think it could be all of those. It could be self-help, women's fiction, psychological fiction, it could be thriller, there's drama. There's so many things in there, and I think the important part of maybe not necessarily even categorizing it is really understanding what you take from it, right? You could just want to read something juicy, which this has. I would say humor, but it was probably my fatal attempt at humor, so who knows? But really, it's more of I guess it's all of them, right? Including maybe even some self help. It's realization. It's underlying truth. It's survival story. It's a survival mode. It's survival patterns. It's a collection of different categories, if you will.
All of the above, people.
Yeah.
So watch it. Watch out for it and read it. What is the core emotional or philosophical question that novel seeks to explore?
It seeks to explore.
Is it identity, guilt, perception, or reality?
Gosh, it could be all of those too, right? And I could be biased because I wrote it, but I think it's exploring our own inner truth. It's exploring who we are. It's really challenging and asking ourselves, is is this my conditioned self, or is this really who I am, right? Is this me? Is this who I want to be? Is this who I need to be, or is this who I actually am beneath all of the layers that we've built? And we all do this, right? We all build these layers around us, and you may shed some layers for some people and not others, but it's really, we all have these emotional layers that we use to block ourselves from maybe thinking, feeling, overexpressing, coping, surviving, all of the things. So really, I would say it's more about exploring the emotional truth, and really it's about becoming aware of the emotional truth, because again, we don't know what we don't know. And you could it's Julie goes along in her life and she keeps repeating these same patterns, and then there is this realization that, hey, I need to do some work. I need to look inward, not necessarily from not necessarily from an external place, right? It's learning to live from the outside in versus the I'm sorry. It's learning about it's realizing how to learn inside out versus outside in, which is what most of us do.
Very well said, Miss Bridget. Beautifully, beautifully articulated. Beyond the literal, what does the mirror represent in your story?
The mirror in the story represents, specifically in this story, is relationships, and how relationships can be a mirror for what what's showing up in our own lives. When, for example, Julie meets her first husband, he is really kind of this embodiment of what her life could be like, and maybe what it's supposed to look like. He invites her to see life without a lot of the wounding that she's carrying, but she just can't see it yet. And in her second marriage, the mirror is really about um, holding up this mirror of saying to yourself, is this really what I want? She explores the idea of having a child and the issues that are complicated around having a child naturally and going through IVF and adoption. And part of it is her looking in this relationship mirror and saying, is this really what I want, or is this what people think I should want? And then her third relationship, the mirror in the relationship is really asking her to look at her own emotional truth as well, because she hadn't really thought about her emotions and maybe mental health at that point. And so I think it's really exploring relationships as a mirror for our own lives and what we need to perhaps maybe take a deeper look at, or what we might be missing in our lives. And one of the things I like to say is, you spot it, you got it, right? If I'm in a relationship where I'm seeing someone who is being confrontational or defensive, I'm spotting those things because maybe there are things within me that I'm also not addressing, right? Maybe I am confrontational and that's the shadow side of me. So really it's relationships as a mirror.
Definitely a mirror is a relationship, people. And how did you cultivate a novel's mood? Were there specific inspirations for its haunting or mysterious vibe?
Hmm. Gosh, you're asking these questions. I think it could be all the things, right? Yeah, the vibe is really, it's just because I think the world of self help can be so confronting for a lot of people. It was a way for me to be able to take some of this knowledge and just weave it into a story where you might be able to see parts of yourself in the story. You might be able to see where maybe you've experienced a certain emotion, or maybe you're starting to see that maybe a part of this, maybe something within you is not really your personality. Good example, I thought I was extremely outgoing person. I'm an only child. I moved a lot as a kid. And so I always had to show up being bubbly and happy and trying to connect with people and make friends. And I've realized later in life, as I've gone through my own healing journey, that I might not be as outgoing as I think I am. That's not necessarily my personality. That was a survival skill. So it's really about it could be mystery too, right? It could be self-help, it could be it could be all of the things, but it's really about exploring this woman's journey and seeing yourself in it and seeing yourself, and not from a I need to fix myself perspective, but celebrating yourself for how you've shown up in your own life, even if you don't always love the ways you show up. But how can you do it with compassion? How can you just foster more awareness and a deeper introspection? I think a lot of us question things in our lives from an external standpoint. We might question authority or someone else or a process or a job. But how often do we question our own mind? And how often do we say to ourselves, um, is this really what I'm thinking? Or is this something that's conditioned within me? So it's really about challenging, I think, just about everything, right? Challenging why everything is the way it is, including your own mind.
Again, very well said, Miss Bridget.
Very well said.
How do you balance the plausible with the uncanny to keep readers questioning what's real?
Hmm. That's a really good question. How do I keep them from questioning what's real? I think it's more of as I was writing this story, it was about maybe you're not questioning if Julie's story is real, because I think, maybe the whole entire story it isn't what you'd expect to be real, right? Could one person really be doing all of this? And it's not even about realism. It's more about, again, finding yourself in even just the smallest parts, or maybe you just want a juicy read, right? I think, the writing for me was more open. I don't have an expectation. I try to really not be attached to the outcome of things. And writing was just another way for me to also kind of continue my healing journey, because writing the emotional truths of Julie allowed me to continue processing things that I thought I had already worked through in my life. And I recognized when I was done writing the book that there were other things that came up for me in my own healing journey. Again, things that I thought I had already maybe worked through. So it's twofold, right? I said threefold. It was to entertain, it was to help people maybe see themselves in her story and begin to question their own life, and then also for my own healing journey.
What's one seemingly minor detail early in the book that becomes profoundly significant later?
Hmm. Well, it depends if you want something funny or something serious. I can go with
can,
funny.
can we
I can
do
go with some.
both?
Yeah. Well, something funny that was profound is, I'm introducing the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who is interviewing Julie, my main character. And she explained, or I kind of give the background as to her life growing up. And she was abandoned by her parents as well, and lived a little bit on the streets, and was eventually put into a foster home. But her living on the streets, there's just little, if you're catching that, throughout the book, I have weaved in a little idiosyncrasy that she has this very, very large tote bag. And the tote bag really is kind of representative of when you experience that in life and you don't know where your next home is, and you don't know if you have to pick up and leave. You tend to bring a lot of things with you. And that doesn't just translate as physical things, that's emotional things too. But her tote bag throughout the story is just huge, and it's always kind of a fixture in each of the scenes, and it was just a way to kind of connect her to the truth of her past as well. So that was one of them.
Indeed, one of them, Miss Bridget. Which character carries the heaviest secret, and how does it corrode or transform them without spoiler?
Hmm. Oh gosh, the heaviest secret. Boy, you're asking really good questions. Let me think. Oh gosh, and it might be more of a because the relationships that I share in the story, the focus is really on Julie and how she's showing up in these relationships. I think the way I can answer that would be more from a writer's perspective and maybe not necessarily a character perspective, but from a writer's perspective, the hardest one for me to write was the marriage that Julie has. It's her third marriage because it seems like it's the easiest one. It seems like the most insignificant one on the surface, but underneath it carried so much weight for Julie that when she finally started, when she reflected on her life years later, and she reflected on that part of her life with this one particular person, um, he was more eye-opening than she would have ever realized because he was asking her, not directly, but the relationship with him was asking her to look emotionally at herself, which she had been burying for so long, and she couldn't see it. She could only see his emotional issues. And so it's more poignant in a retrospective kind of way that she doesn't even see until her fourth marriage.
Miss Bridget, as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Hmm. Yeah, again, I'm trying not to be attached to a whole lot, right? I really enjoyed writing this novel.
Yes.
And yeah, maybe I'll write another one. I don't know. I guess it depends on how this goes or what interests me. Right now, I'm taking courses on trying to learn more about Krishnamurta, and I'm a lifelong learner. So we'll see. Maybe something else will grab my attention and I'll go a different direction. I'm enjoying reading. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I'd love to write another one. I enjoyed the process of writing, but I am open to whatever the universe would like to bring.
Yes, and good luck for that, Miss Bridget, and looking forward for more success. What would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be an author like you?
Right from your heart, right from what you know. I think so many of us in everything that we do, we try to be something everyone else wants us to be, right? We try to be who we think everyone else needs us to be, and just right from your heart. My book is not for everyone. If 100 people read my book, I will be ecstatic. Don't write for the masses. Write for what feels true to you.
Definitely something you will proud of and will be your legacy to the world.
Yeah.
And Miss Bridget, can you please recommend a book that influenced your journey?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked me that because I know when we were conversing a little bit online before this interview, you had asked me that question, and I have two. And the first one is, and I've got the books with me. So the first one is Already Free by Bruce Tift. Love, love, love that book. That book was really impactful for me because Bruce Tift masterfully marries two perspectives that really kind of offer this holistic approach to growth and liberation. And it's a perfect mix of, I would say, maybe therapy and spiritual wisdom that really makes the journey of self discovery feel really kind of grounding and freeing. So that was one of them. And the very first book, which is probably the first book I ever read, if I'm being honest, it would be 15 years ago, I was not a reader. I happened to pick up this book, and this book literally changed my life. It's Eating Animals by Jonathan Foer. And it was a game changer for me, and not because he promotes veganism, but it really made me think about where my food comes from. And it also made me think or rethink alignment in my own life and really question my own conditioning. So it was about, I've got this deep connection with animals. And so reading the book, as I said, I became vegan, but it shifted really how I view my own values and how they show up in everything I do. So those two books I think were probably the most impactful for me in my life.
Thank you for your recommended book, Miss Bridget. And without the spoilers, behind the mirror, does the ending offer closure, ambiguity, or a call to action? How do you hope readers sit with it afterward?
Yeah, it could be a call to action to, again, kind of rethink your own conditioning in your life and to rethink your personality. Because again, a lot of things that how we show up in life, we all think it's our personality, and it may not be, right? And so it's kind of questioning your own patterns, beliefs, and behaviors and seeing what shows up there, right? Having more awareness. And closure, yeah, maybe, right? I think the ending, I really loved the ending because it would be something I would love to have my life end up that way, and maybe it's something I can align with and have that happen. But I would say that there is some form of closure. Yes, at least for Julie.
Yes. Which aspect of the story felt most autobiographical or emotionally raw for you to write?
So again, Julie and I share a lot of emotional truths. The story is hers, but we share a lot of emotional truths. So the whole thing was really, a lot of it was really tough to write, right? Because I drew on the emotional themes that I lived through, but the story itself is a work of fiction. So it's more like kind of sharing emotional territory with her. And so, like Julie, I've been married 4 times. Like Julie, I have 3 parents in my life. And so, navigating those complicated kind of family dynamics were very, very real for me. And yeah, so I would say a good part of the book was not difficult to write, but very emotional to write.
Miss Bridget, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my
Mm,
baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in third season, and my movie 101 review and music 101
yeah.
in its fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. And Miss Bridget, what's one question about identity, perception, or truth you hope lingers with readers long after they finish your book?
What we don't heal, we recreate. But when we can bring awareness and compassion to patterns in our lives, we can create the space for something entirely different, right? So it's the book isn't about fixing yourself. It's just about seeing yourself more clearly, right? And kind of realizing you're not broken. We all just have things, right? So if I can leave that with anyone, it's really just about, yeah, just what we don't heal, we recreate. So just know that.
Miss Bridget Budd, thank you so much for sharing behind the mirror to the world. And can you please invite our listeners to support your debut novel?
Yes, absolutely. Please share this episode with someone who is always holding it together. I think they would be really interested to hear this discussion and to read my book.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Bridget Budd, because if you support her, well, for sure, more and more and more empowering novels like this to come. So, Miss Bridget, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. And I'm going to get that clapping noise because I could use that in my own life every day, whenever I feel like I'm doing something great. So thank you.
Definitely. And more to come, people. See you soon.
Thanks, Daniel.